Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this episode sees the conclusion of our epic adventure across Kakabad in search of a fancy hat that will finally fix the economy of Analand. We have arrived at the Crown of Kings, the conclusion of a journey that has seen us walk across hills, take in a short city break, and stamp on several snakes. Now, the fortress of Mampang looms large, and we will hopefully have the opportunity to finally challenge the mysterious archmage. That's not going to happen on the recorded playthrough though. This book is 800 paragraphs long, and unless I happen to find a secret passage that leads directly to the end, I don't envisage getting out of the first act. The Crown of Kings was written by Steve Jackson, and the internal illustrations were by the mighty John Blanche. In the first edition he also did the cover art, but I've got the Scholastic reprint where the cover is by Robert Ball. It's very colourful, but also quite small, being a circular image that's mostly a demon face that's on fire, in a way the demon seems to find relatively agreeable, if his big cheesy grin is anything to go by. It's a nice illustration, but I would have preferred something that covered the whole front cover. Also, there's a little skull in the O of Steve Jackson, which is a bit odd given that the fonts used are otherwise very dull. The title and the Fighting Fantasy logo are embossed in gold, which is nice. I'm not going to complain about the relatively subpar cover because I'm just so delighted that this book has been reprinted. Reprint them all, reprint them all. Before we get into the meat of the episode, I need to thank a new patron. Tim Leitner, thank you very much for your support. All patrons receive a parcel of gamebooks by way of a thank you for their largesse, and you can join their august number by going to patreon.com/HJDoom and pledging as little as a single English pound to support my nonsense. It keeps the podcast on the air and ad-free, and also ensures I keep producing my second podcast, where I'm currently watching a large number of terrible movies and rambling about them. Any and all support is gratefully received. Now, let's take a look at the rules. It's your basic Fighting Fantasy rules, but with a twist. You get the ability to call on your goddess Libra for aid once per game, and you get to cast magic spells, provided you have the required components and you're willing to only roll 1d6 plus 4 for your skill, rather than the usual 1d6 plus 6. You can forego magic entirely and get the usual rules for skill. Spells will also cost you stamina to cast, and there's a neat special rule whereby you have to remember the 3-letter code which relates to each spell. If you want to cast a spell, you'll have to pick it out from a list that includes several actual spells and a couple of red herrings. You might get offered Zap, Dop and Bum, for example, and you would have to remember that Zap is for shooting lightning, Dop is for opening locked doors, and Bum is the squishy thing at the top of your legs. Yours may or may not be magical, but within the context of the Sorcery series, it's very much not an actual spell. Try to cast Bum, and bad things will happen. There's a whole bunch of spells, and most of them are useful in some situations, albeit sometimes in quite a niche way. You also need to remember what components they have and whether you've got them. You get some food which can only be eaten when instructed, and some gold to spend on things, both of which are quite important in previous books. I would normally be using a version of the character that I used to beat the last book in the series, complete with all of their hard-won trinkets and spell components. But unfortunately, my laptop's fans have recently died, and while it's being repaired, I'm using a truly ancient backup laptop, which just about manages to record and edit audio, but will set fire to itself if I ask it to do anything more complicated. I don't have access to the text file that had all my notes from previous books because, for unclear reasons, I decided to store all of that information on a notepad document and only save it locally and not back it up to the cloud. I'm sure I had a brilliant reason for doing that, the sort of reason you definitely regard as completely sensible, but I can't remember what it was, and it does mean that I'm flying blind with respect to my previous characters. It's especially annoying as I had found a whole bunch of clues which would help with this book, and I diligently wrote them down, and I've now lost access to that file, and I can't remember basically anything that I wrote down because it was several weeks ago and my brain is soggy. It's a bit of a shame. Still, there are a few trinkets that I definitely remember having, which I'm going to add to my character sheet. Otherwise, though, I'm going to be starting with a fresh character. The bits that I'm sure I had are as follows: some goblin teeth, a giant's tooth, a green wig, a brass pendulum, a skull cap, some pebbles, a gale horn, and a staff of oak sapling, which honestly kind of makes me sound as though I'm dressing up for a hen night. These are all magical components I'm certain I picked on the previous adventures. Aside from that, I'll be starting with my sword, backpack, 20 gold pieces, and 2 portions of provisions. I've rolled up a character who I have decided to call Leucistic Propanol because that's a suitably heroic name. Sadly, Leucistic does not have a very heroic profile, having a skill of 5, a stamina of 18, and an acceptable luck of 11. I don't envisage them having an especially lengthy adventure, and I'm already warming up my sausagey fingers in expectation that they'll be getting a workout. I think that's everything. Let's play Sorcery Book 4, Crown of Kings. You should all know the backstory by now. We travelled across the land looking for the Crown of Kings, which the archmage of Mampang half-inched from the King of Analand. Most recently, we succeeded in killing the 7 serpents that were trying to make their way back to the archmage with news of our desperate mission. Okay, technically, we killed 6 snakes and a nice elf lady captured the 7th in a magic orb, but the important thing is I definitely managed to stop any news getting back about our presence in Kakbad. That opens up a secret starting paragraph for this book, which is exceptionally cool. Or at least it will be, if it's more impactful than the secret starting point of Kare City Port of Traps, which was exactly the same as the other one, except you don't have to knock on a door. The 7 serpents had been carrying a message of your arrival back to the Archmage at Mampang. Since you have defeated all 7 of the Archmage's messengers, no news of your mission has reached the fortress. If, during your adventure, you come across a creature or a group of creatures who recognise you as the Analander, you may ignore that particular reference you are on at the time and turn to a new reference in which you will find you are not recognised. To get to the new reference, deduct 40 from the reference you are on. If you did not kill all the serpents in Book 3, you should not be reading this message. Now turn to 1 to begin your adventure. Well, that's exciting. That feels like a really cool mechanic. Already, I am thrilled to be embarking on this adventure. Like a giant claw clutching at the sky, the Mampang fortress is a foreboding image etched into your mind. Although it is the goal of your mission, its appearance in the distance gives you no sense of relief at the approach of your journey's end. The feeling is rather one of apprehension and danger, as you pick your way towards the great castle on high, which is partly obscured by the billowing clouds which shroud the uppermost peaks of the Zanzunas. The going becomes harder as your trail climbs through low Zaman. The Zanzunu foothills are evidently little used by creatures on foot, and the path is indistinct. Where the way is muddy, you can make out hoof marks along the trail. They are days, if not weeks, old. But what sort of creature has made them? The sun fades behind dense clouds and the sky darkens. Perhaps a storm is brewing. A deep, distant rumbling from the heavens confirms your suspicion. You had better prepare yourself. There is a picture of the approach, and you can just make out hazily in the distance the fortress of Mampang, the foreground being dominated by rearing columns of particularly harsh-looking stone, and you can see sort of birds flying about. It's quite nice. It feels as though it's maybe slightly zoomed in from the original illustration. I could be completely wrong about that. There's something a little bit odd about the way it's been rendered. Anyway, yeah, it's fine. It's not going to linger long in the mind, but it gets the job done. It is already late in the evening, so perhaps it would be wise for you to find a suitable place to camp for the night. There is plenty of shelter under the vegetation to avoid the rain, but you would feel safer in a cave of some sort if you're going to get some sleep. You pause to consider which way would offer you the best chance of shelter. To the east and west, leaving the trail, the undergrowth would make the going heavy with no real cover, which you would be happy to sleep under. No, the path ahead to the north is really your only way forwards. Your eyes follow it. A few 100 metres ahead, it turns to the right around a rocky ridge. With a bit of luck, there may be a nook of some sort in the side of the ridge in which you'll be able to shelter. You press on. Do you like the word nook? I do enjoy a nook. I'm a fan of nooks. The house I live in is sadly deficient, I would say, in nooks. It is more or less a nook-free environment. Whereas the house I grew up in was full of nooks. Nooks as far as the eye can see. That was a nooky old building. Anyway, when you reach the bend in the path, you are able to see what lies ahead. To your right, you see exactly what you are looking for. Not one, but 3 caves are set into the rock. The nearest one has the smallest entrance, which probably opens into quite a shallow cave. The central cave looks large enough for you to light a fire inside, although this cave could be quite deep and therefore dangerous. The third cave is of similar size, but looking at the trail you notice that the hoof prints lead off into this cave. Which cave will you try for shelter? Well, the smallest one feels as though it's going to be pretty awkward if I do get attacked. The one at the far end seems like it's a thoroughfare of some sort. That could be dangerous. I think the middle one, much like the porridge in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, will be just right. So that's the one I'm going to go for. You step up to the cave entrance and peer inside. It doesn't smell particularly pleasant in there, but it seems safe enough. The thing that is a little worrying, though, is the depth of the cave. You cannot see the back. The cave just disappears into the blackness. If you feel you would be safer in one of the other caves, you may approach either the smallest cave or the other big cave. If you wish to venture inside this cave, you can. I mean, that feels like a pretty strong hint that this is a terrible cave. I'm going to go for the small one instead then. I'm going to change my mind. I don't do it very often, but on this occasion I'm going to change my mind. Rather than doing what is everyone's usual inclination when it's suggested that you might have made a mistake, and that's just to simply double down. But yeah, I am going to sensibly head to the smaller cave. You step up to the small cave mouth and kneel down to look inside. Although you'll be able to crawl into the cave, the entrance will be a tight squeeze. But as your eyes become accustomed to the darkness, you can see that there will be enough room for you to fit comfortably. The back of the cave is black, so you are unable to tell whether or not the cave is completely empty. You get down on all fours and poke your head into the cave. Oh! A shrill howling comes from inside the cave and all but deafens you. Instinctively, you jerk your head out again, away from the danger. The noise sounded as though it came from a hound of some sort. You spring to your feet and draw out your weapon, ready to face whatever is inside. But nothing emerges from the cave. When your courage has returned, you must make a decision. Will you enter the cave and face whatever is inside? Try the middle cave or the far cave. I'm not doing well at picking caves. I've got a skill of 5. I don't fancy trying to throw hands with whatever is inside this cave. I've only got 18 stamina. That's not great either. So casting spells is something I'm going to have to be kind of careful about. So I think we're going to have to go for the far cave. Oh, this is thrilling stuff to open. Choosing a cave. What could be more exciting? You approach the cave with due caution, pausing by the entrance to check how fresh the hoof marks are. To your relief, it seems that there are no recent prints, but whatever type of creature made the marks, 2 or 3 of them visited the cave, judging by the number of trails leading in and out. You peer into the entrance. The cave appears to be quite deep, but empty as far as you can make out. Clutching your weapon, you step inside. Just inside the mouth of the cave, a shape makes you stop quickly. Sitting on a rock, a little further back inside, is a figure leaning against the wall. It is human-like and naked, but making no movement. A long mane of hair sweeps down its back, which is thankfully towards you, otherwise you would surely have been spotted by now. Will you call out to attract the attention of the creature, or rush in and attack before it has a chance to react? Or leave well alone and look for somewhere else to shelter? So there is a picture of the creature. I think it's some sort of satire, judging by the artwork, and I think also it might be dead. I just get that impression from the artwork, which is very characterful, but very dark, as you would expect from something dimly seen inside a cave. There's a strong hint that there might be a little bit of, a skull rather than an ordinary face. So I'm going to try and attract its attention and see what, if anything, it says to me. Obviously, if it's dead, probably nothing. You call out to hail whoever is sitting in the cave. There is no reaction. Again, you try, and the response is the same. Either this person is totally deaf, or there is something strange going on here. You decide to investigate, keeping your hand on your weapon. Your hand reaches out to touch his shoulder, and as it does so, you jump. The creature's flesh is cold. The body rocks on its seat and falls over backwards. The corpse is quite dead. I was right. Lovely bit of hinting from the art there. Made it kind of obvious that, it was a corpse that we were dealing with. And another surprise is in store. His body is not that of a man, but that of a female of some sort, and although its torso is human, its legs are hairy and end in hooves. Its face is a strange blend of human and goat-like features with two horns on its forehead. You quickly recover from the shock and compose yourself. The rest of the cave seems to be empty, and there is more than enough space to make yourself comfortable. Do you wish to bed down for the night here and perhaps eat some provisions, or try one of the other caves? I will bed down for the night here. There's one thing that can't hurt you, it's the dead. A bit morbid, bedding down next to a corpse, but, it seems to me like the safest of the available options. You find a comfortable area to bed down for the night. If you have any provisions, you may now eat a meal. Yes, I'd better eat a meal, because if you don't, you lose stamina. So provisions now down to 1. So I've eaten an entire multi-bag of quavers, one after the other, like just some pig, and I may add 2 stamina points if this is the first meal of the day, or 1 stamina point if you've already eaten. Well, my stamina is maximum, and that's fine. Soon darkness comes, and with it the rumble of thunder in the distance. You settle down for the night. The storm breaks during the night, waking you several times. You are thankful for the shelter your cave affords. Rain pelts down and muddy puddles form in the cave entrance. By morning, the rain has stopped and the sun is fighting its way through the low-hanging clouds. You rise early and prepare yourself for the day. Judging the distance as best you can, you should reach the fortress by the end of the day. If your stamina is below its initial level, you may add 2 points for the rest. I am fine. If you did not eat at all yesterday, you must deduct 3 stamina points, as you are now hungry. Well, I did eat. If you wish, you may take with you some stone dust and 3 small pebbles. So that means I've got 9 pebbles and some stone dust. Stone dust, I think, is used for a spell that creates quicksand. Or is the stone dust for turning people to stone? There are two spells that might be useful for. But obviously I can't look it up. Now you must leave your cave and set off on your journey. As you climb through the foothills of Lozaman, you notice how few animals are about. Certainly animals would hide from you, but there are no signs of wildlife at all. Perhaps the terrain is too treacherous. The going is undoubtedly becoming harder, and by the late morning you are climbing steeply. Ahead, the road trail splits to offer you 2 ways onwards. To the right, the path continues to wind up the mountainside, while to the left, a narrow rope bridge spans a gully and joins another path. Both lead upwards in the direction you are heading. So we can either go up the mountain to the right or the rope bridge to the left. Well, I would prefer to go up the mountain. Do not care for rope bridges, but I am nothing if not bound by the conventions of this podcast, and when we get the left-right choice, we always go left, even if it's a stupid idea. You follow the path along to the rope bridge. Examining it, you find that it is strong enough to hold you, but it sways about dangerously as you step onto it. The gully that it spans is deep, and a fall from the bridge would certainly kill you. Test your luck. Should be fine. I have a luck of 11. I roll a 4 and a 5, making 9. I'm absolutely fine. Luck now 10. You manage to hold on as the bridge sways under your weight. When you reach the other side, you breathe a sigh of relief and continue along the trail. The trail winds up the mountainside, and you follow it until a sight ahead makes you stop. To the left, higher up the rocky cliffs, is a strange structure made out of twigs, branches and moss. This looks like a huge bird's nest perched on a ledge. Do you want to climb up the side of the mountain to investigate, or will you ignore it and continue along the path? I would like to climb up the side of the mountain, but I feel as though that's going to be a skill test, and with a skill of 5, I think I could come unstuck quite badly. Also, is there going to be a giant bird, and will the giant bird be cross? Will the giant bird have young that will try and kill me, and while they're trying to kill me, will the adult giant bird come back and try and kill me as well? These are all things that are possibilities, but I do want to know what's up there, so let's go and see if we can have a butcher's. There is no trail leading up to the great nest. You must climb up the rock face, taking care not to let any of your belongings fall. A couple of times your foot slips and sends a cascade of small pebbles down the path below, but eventually you reach the ledge. As it seemed earlier, the nest is like a huge eyrie, but with nooks and crannies where objects could be hidden. Do you want to investigate these possible hiding places, or do you think it prudent to think not so much about possible treasures, but more about what might live in this giant nest? I am going to climb back down, I think. Yeah. Why would there be objects hidden in nooks and crannies of a nest rather than simply scattered about the nest? Whatever giant bird lives here, is it sort of squirreling magical things away in a corner? Doesn't seem very likely, so I think discretion is going to be the better part of valour here. You continue along the path, which winds along the side of the mountain past 2 more similar giant nests. Thankfully, there are still no signs of whatever lives in them. But your relief is short-lived, for a flickering shadow appears around you. You look up towards the sun and can make out a large shape hovering in the air. 2 great wings are beating to keep the creature aloft. You shield your eyes from the sun and are able to see more clearly what is watching you. A human shape is held in the air by the huge feathery wings. Its mouth is a sharp hooked beak, and wild black hair blows in the wind. Its arms and legs all end in sharp talons, and the creature is watching you intently. Of course, this is the land of the Birdmen, who might conceivably have hidden all kinds of treasure in the nooks and crannies of their nest. That's unfortunate. There's a picture of one of the Birdmen, and it is absolutely brilliant. Love it. Oh, you can sort of see one arm and one wing and one leg and the sort of shadow of another wing, but it's been really, really interestingly lit in order to make it seem that much more alien. Yeah, it's a cracking bit of work. It looks super sinister. Yeah, really, really like it. These creatures are among the most hated and feared in all of the Zanzunas. The Zaman Birdmen were responsible for your mission in the first place. It was they who stole the crown of kings from the court in Analand. Do you want to seek shelter behind a bushy shrub on the side of the path, or will you instead hail the creature and try to talk to it? Well, I feel as though taking shelter is probably a bad plan, given that the Birdman has this elevated position and, I assume, excellent eyesight. So I guess the only real option is to try and talk to it. The Birdman looks down at you as you try a few pleasantries. It opens its mouth to speak, but instead of a reply, a piercing call comes from the creature and it drops from the sky towards you, talons poised to strike. You leap aside to avoid its attack, but it catches your shoulder and tears your flesh. Lose 2 stamina points for the wound. Okay, stamina now 16. It seems that the Birdman is not interested in conversation, and you will have to fight it. You may either draw your weapon or cast a spell. So the spells include Yap, Hot, Fix, Zen, and Sap. I feel as though Hot is the obvious one. That just kind of chucks a fireball. That'll be good, but it will eat a lot of stamina points. Yap, I think, will let me talk to it. There's Yap, and I think there's Rap, that you can talk to animals and monsters. You do have to wear a green wig to do so, but I've got a green wig. Fix is interesting. I think Fix kind of turns things into stone, and I think the stone dust might be the component I need for that. Genuinely can't remember what Zen does. Sap, I think, just saps the strength, so that might force the creature to land. I'm going to try Fix. Deduct 1 stamina point. Do you have a Staff of Oak Sapling with you? I do, in fact. If not, this spell will not work, and you must deduct 2 stamina points as the Birdman slashes you with its talons. Yeah, whatever, I've got a staff. If you have such a staff, you hold it out and cast the spell at the creature. Ordinarily, this spell would work, but as fate would have it, the creature chooses that very moment to dart down from the sky. Your spell misses and the creature is upon you. Yes, I've achieved nothing and I must fight the Birdman. There is no escaping this creature. You are in a battle to the death. Specifically, my death, because the Birdman has a skill of 9 and a stamina of 11. So, for the first and potentially last time this adventure, I'm going to roll some dice. The Birdman has defeated me very handily, and I dealt 0 points of damage to the Birdman. So, yes, an inauspicious start and an early end to Leucistic Propanol's adventuring career. However, it's obviously far too soon to call a halt, so I will invoke the Sausagey Finger bookmark rule, and I will say that I have defeated the Birdman, and I will return my stamina to 15, which seems reasonable. But yes, very early bath there for Leucistic Propanol. As the creature dies, it lifts its head towards the sky and tries to emit a final distress call. Realising what the Birdman is doing, you swing your blade down through its neck. The beginnings of its cry gurgle and splutter, and it slumps backwards. You allow yourself a couple of minutes' rest after the battle, and then set off again along the trail. The trail continues to climb upwards into the mountains. In the distance, the dark shape of Mampang Fortress is becoming larger by the hour. You will certainly reach the gates by nightfall. You come to a little sheltered alcove where you may rest and take provisions. No, I don't wish to stop, because, as we all know, absolutely the worst thing you can do in the Sorcery series is have lunch. You follow the path. It takes you downhill for a short distance, then across a rocky plateau. It disappears around a corner, and you follow it through a short tunnel in the rock. When you come out the other side of the tunnel, you can see 2 ways onwards. The trail itself continues straight ahead. If you wish to follow it, you may. To your left, another short trail leads down to a ledge. The ledge faces another similar ledge across a narrow crevasse. It is just too wide to jump across safely, but there is another way of crossing. A length of rope is hanging down above the ledge from a rock. Presumably this is for foot travellers such as yourself to swing across. Do you wish to investigate this? I do indeed. You pull down on the rope. It seems to be strong enough to take your weight. You may either swing across the crevasse on the rope or cast a spell. So we've got a choice of Pep, How, Doc, Kin, or Huff. How will give me some kind of guide as to how to proceed. Doc, I think, just makes any healing potions you have more efficient. Kin, I've a feeling, summons illusions of yourself. And Huff creates a big old wind. of these, only How really strikes me as useful. And I don't think it's going to be that useful, because you either swing across or you don't. I'm going to swing across. I don't want to lose the stamina from casting a spell unnecessarily. Securing your possessions, you grab the rope firmly and once more check that it is well fastened to the rock above. You take a few steps backwards to get a good run at the crevasse. Swinging across the gully should be an easy matter. You run forwards and leap from the ledge. Then it is all over in an instant. Even though you had tested the rope thoroughly, it is not as safe as it appeared. This shortcut to the Mampang fortress was a trap designed to catch wanted intruders such as yourself. In mid-air, the rope begins to stretch quickly so that when you arrive at the other side, you are not at a height to land on the ledge. Instead, you slammed into the mountainside with such force that it immediately knocked you out. You fall deep into the crevasse. It kills you, but at least you were not conscious when your death came. So, not great. That is the second death in about 10 minutes. Right, okay, well, I said the sausagey-fingered bookmarks would be getting a good workout today, and I was not lying. So, we will go back to the previous section, and we will cast How in order to presumably get the warning not to proceed. Deduct 2 stamina points, stamina now 13. You cast your spell and wait for some indication of whether the rope is safe or not. You begin to feel a strange sensation. The hand which is gripping the rope begins to glow with a peculiar heat. At first you think you may be imagining things, but eventually you are certain that the spell is trying to tell you something. But what? Well, I think we know. I think we've got a very good idea about what that might be telling us. So we will leave the rope and continue along the trail. The trail curls behind a large boulder and continues. You are a little concerned about the fact that it is now leading you round the side of the mountain concealing the fortress. A crevasse is preventing you from heading on towards Mampang. You must find some way across it. A short while further on you find what may be your answer. A wooden bridge spanning the 2 sides of the crevasse. Will you try crossing the bridge, or would you prefer to continue along the trail? Let's try crossing the bridge. And this time, if we get offered a magic spell, we will definitely take it. The wooden bridge seems to be quite strong, but you are not one to trust appearances, and will not risk this bridge without first testing it carefully. You put a foot onto it, then your whole weight, holding tightly onto the rope handrail. As your weight is taken by the wooden links of the bridge, a strange sound seems to come from it. Ooh! The soft moan makes you jump back onto the ground. What was that? As soon as you step off the bridge, the noise ceases. Again you try stepping onto it, and again the groaning sound comes. Trying a few steps forward towards the middle of the bridge, the sound is quite disturbing. Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Although the moaning is somewhat unnerving, the bridge itself seems strong enough to take your weight. Is Quentin Tarantino under this bridge somehow? Do you want to try crossing it and continue making Quentin Tarantino happy? Or do you want to try another way across the crevasse? I think I'm going to risk making Quentin Tarantino happy. It's just some moaning. It's not doing me any physical harm other than making me feel really creeped out. You step onto the bridge. Again, the groaning sound follows your footsteps, but now you are used to it. The sound is quite amusing. In fact, the humour of the situation is a welcome relief to the anxiety you would be feeling if you were crossing the bridge and looking down into the chasm. But in the next second, you are looking down into the chasm and watching it come racing towards you, for the rope bridge of groans has disappeared completely. Not a trace of it remains, leaving you flying downwards through the air to your death. You will never know the true secret of the groaning bridge. Your last memory will be the sound of the groaning, which has now turned into a faint mocking laugh way above you. So, again, we've died. Again, I invoke the sausagey finger bookmark rule. I mean, wow. A lot of death in this one. A lot of death. I mean, you could say that I was asking for it a bit, but I was genuinely so weirded out by the groaning bridge that I just had to know what happens if you walked on it. Yeah, I mean, I think this death, unlike the previous death, which was also a falling death, could have been avoided if only the book had thought to give us a magical spell that, I don't know, made your body as light as a feather. I mean, if there was a spell that made your body as light as a feather, then surely that would be a good way to save yourself from dying from falling off a mountain. And in fact, there is a spell that does exactly that, and Steve Jackson's just forgotten. Either that, or you don't have time to cast the spell, which makes it kind of useless for its intended purpose. Like, its stated purpose is to make you as light as a feather so that you don't die from falling off things. So anyway, this is what happens when you have a big spell book. You forget what half the spells are, ironically. And yeah, there's no way they should have been fatal. So, hey-ho. But them's the breaks. Once again, sausagey finger bookmark rule. Oh, my sausagey fingers, they're getting quite tired from the effort of being bookmarks at this point. And we will follow the trail a bit further to see if there's another way across. Preferably one that you can see someone else using, maybe. That would be handy. I don't know whether the groaning bridge is one of the clues from the Seven Serpents. There's all kinds of slightly opaque clues in that book. I wish I had access to the file I made previously. But nothing I can do now. Continuing around the side of the mountain, you walk for another 10 minutes or so. Your hopes sink as you see that a rock fall has covered the trail between two great boulders. The way ahead is blocked. You may be able to climb over the rock fall. If, on the other hand, you want to turn back and try one of the fatal ways across the crevasse, you can do that as well. Well, we will go for a climb, obviously. You scramble up the rock pile to view what lies ahead. On your way, your foot slips, you twist your ankle and must lose 1 stamina point. Stamina now 12, could be a lot worse, could for instance have fallen to my death 2 times in a row. But on the other side of the rock fall is an even more welcome sight than you had hoped for. The landslip has occurred at a point where the crevasse had become narrower, and the fallen rocks now form a sturdy bridge towards Mampang. You scramble across to the other side of the crevasse without incident. You are now in Mampang itself, and very close to your goal. You follow the path back along the crevasse, but now you are on the fortress side. A rumbling noise stops you in your tracks and you look around. There is nothing in front of you, nor anything behind you. Your blood chills as you look up to your right. From somewhere on high, further up the mountain, stones are breaking loose. You are directly beneath an imminent landslide. You will have to decide quickly what to do. Will you rush on ahead and try and beat the landslide? Try and pluck up the courage and leap across the crevasse to your left to return to the original trail, or cast a spell? There's a choice of Nif, Huff, Zip, Wall, or Rock, of which I think only Wall will potentially help, because that does create a big old wall, but at a cost of quite a few stamina points. So there's a picture of the rock fall, very dramatic, but also clearly done pretty quickly. I guess there were maybe more illustrations that had to be done for this book than for previous instalments. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It conveys exactly what it needs to convey. But, yeah, it looks like it's been knocked off at considerable speed. So, choices. I think we're going to try and rush on ahead and beat the landslide. I don't want to jump back onto the other side of the crevasse. I was so pleased when I got onto this side. Just don't make me go back. I don't want to go back. So, it's either that, or I could cast the wall spell, which I'm pretty sure would be a good way of protecting me. The only problem is if I get buried by the landslide, once the wall spell runs out, I'll then just be crushed under the weight of the rock. So I think actually just legging it and hoping for the best is the right answer. You run as fast as you are able. Ahead is a large boulder which should afford at least some shelter from the landslide. You race forwards and squat down behind it, panting hard. Above you, the landslide is picking up momentum. Rocks are crashing around you and several smaller ones bounce painfully off your head and back. A creaking noise raises the alarm, but you are too late to react to prevent fate from taking your life. The creaking you heard was the boulder rolling back towards the crevasse as the landslide forced it into motion. You manage to avoid being crushed to death as it rolls away from you, but this only leaves you exposed to the landslide. Your journey ends here. With Herculean effort, sweat beading on my brow, I will once more invoke the sausagey finger bookmark rule. Turn back to the previous page. Oh, my poor sausagey fingers. They're so tired. Fine. This has been an absolute unmitigated disaster. I'm going to cast the spell Wall. Deduct 4 stamina points. Like, I get wanting to make the end of the adventure more dangerous, but given how relatively kind the difficulty level has been thus far, I feel as though this is an overcorrection. I think any one of these instant deaths would have been fine. All 3 of them together seems brutal. Now, you can argue that it's me being stupid, and yeah, I don't really have a rebuttal for that, other than that's mean. Like, correct, but mean. But yes, I've cast Wall. You cast your spell and create an invisible barrier along the side of the trail so the falling rocks smash into it and pile up. Your creation shudders as the weight builds up and you decide it is best to run ahead quickly before the spell wears off. You pass the landslide safely. Further along the trail you come to a wide crack in the rock which is spanned by a narrow bridge. So I guess I could have jumped over and then taken this bridge to Mampang. The bridge is solid and barely responds to your weight as you cross over. You pick up the path which leads south round the rim of the mountain. The fortress itself is set on the inside of a volcano-like peak. Inside the rim is a flat plateau which forms an ideal base for a stronghold, defence made easy by the surrounding rock. There is only one pass through to the fortress. All you have to do is find it. You presume that the trail leads towards the path and follow it round. The sky is darkening now as the sun is setting. It has been a long, tiring day. I mean, what's more tiring than dying 4 times? Ahead you see what you are looking for. The path widens and turns into the rock. You creep cautiously forward. The pass is doubtless defended by guards. With each step you can see a little further round into the inner plateau. When you stand directly in front of the pass, your jaw drops in awe. The Mampang Fortress. And there is a picture of the Mampang Fortress, which I would describe as aggressively fine. Again, it's nice. The composition is really nice. It's just all a bit short on detail, and it all looks a bit hurried. I do feel as though this entire book, the art, seems to have been somewhat curtailed by a tight deadline. I mean, flicking through, there are some absolutely great pictures in here. It's fine. You've got the pass, you've got the fortress. They both look kind of like you might expect. The fortress has got big gates and a big skull thing over the gates, but yeah, it's just short on detail. Short on detail, short on character. Spellbound by its presence, your eyes follow its lines. Gnarled spires twist upwards towards the sky as if in agonised prayers to the heavens. Sharp angles and jagged points protrude everywhere. Demonic gargoyles line the outside walls. The sight is enough to break the courage of many a brave soldier, and its effect on you is similar. Deduct 1 skill point until you are inside the fortress. Skill now 4. You quickly snap out of your trance and plan your approach. There may be guards in the pass, but you cannot see any. But standing in the open as you are, anyone inside could certainly see you. Will you creep forward cautiously, looking out for guards, or will you run to get through the pass before you are spotted? Let's creep forward cautiously. You watch both sides of the pass as you approach, keeping your eyes peeled for signs of life. You stop when you hear a rasping noise ahead. Slumped on the floor on the right-hand side of the passage are two heavily armed guards. They are not moving and appear to be asleep. One of them is gripping an upturned wine flagon in his hand and the contents are seeping out. They are drunk. You may try creeping past them. Test your luck. 9, I am lucky, albeit only just. My luck now reduced to 9. Safely inside, you consider your best plan. Night is coming and you are feeling tired. You had better find a sheltered spot to bed down for the night and get some rest. You explore the inside rim of the mountain and find a suitable small cave which appears to be empty. You may eat provisions here before you get some sleep. And indeed I will. I will eat my last set of provisions. Tucking into some pancakes with maple syrup. Delicious. I can restore 2 stamina points if it's the first meal of the day, which it is. Because lunch is for the week. Stamina now 10. Your dreams that night are vivid and frightening. Perhaps this is the influence of Mampang. Several times you awaken in a cold sweat and you toss and turn constantly. Are you still faithful to your goddess Libra? I am indeed. Thankfully, one calming dream interrupts your nightmares. The reassuring face of Libra, your goddess, appears and speaks softly. My loyal devotee, the end of your arduous journey is in sight. The dangers you will face within the Mampang fortress are many, but you have so far proven a worthy choice for this mission. I have watched your progress with interest and, at times, with fear for your life. Which, to be fair, was reasonable, given that I appear to have the attitude of a chronically depressed lemming in this adventure. But at each stage of the journey you have been successful, and with little help from me. I bring you this final message. It may be the last help I can give you, for the netherworld deities which oversee Mampang are powerful enough even to keep me out of its stronghold. If you would know the truth, I am in some danger even as I speak. I cannot help you while you are inside the fortress. Because the netherworld gods protect Mampang, little is known of its secrets. But I will tell you this. A generation ago, another of my followers escaped from this fortress through a secret passage. He had discovered the password which would open its hidden door. I will whisper this to you. She speaks a word softly in your ear. If you wish to use the password at some time during your adventure, deduct 92 from the reference you are on at the time. If you are using it correctly, the new reference will make sense and take you through the secret door. So that's handy. Hopefully this means we can find a way into the fortress. Did you spend last night in the cave with the hoofprints outside? I did indeed. Libra continues. I must tell you also some bad news which may affect the success of your mission. Last night you spent the entire night in the same cave as a carrier of the trembling disease. She then goes on to describe the effects of the disease. The dead creature you encountered in the cave was a she-satyr. Or a satyr. It was a weird thing to say. Oh, a she-satyr. A lady-satyr. It had died from an extremely contagious disease which, through spending the night in the cave, you picked up. It is an unpleasant malady called the trembling disease. The ailment takes a full day to take effect, but so long as you remain uncured, it will affect you in 2 ways. From now on, you may not regain any stamina points. The disease prevents the body from recovering strength. Secondly, it befuddles the brain under pressure, making concentration difficult. From now on, if you wish to choose a spell from the options given in the text, you must throw 1 dice. Imagine the options are numbered from 1 to 5 from left to right. You can only choose the spell corresponding to the number you roll. This is a death sentence for someone with a skill of 4. You are calling for more concentration than your mind can cope with under the effects of the trembling disease, and the results are unpredictable. If the number rolled is a 6, then you may ignore these instructions and choose whichever spell you wish for that particular encounter. You would be well advised to seek a cure for the trembling disease. Can I not just get her to cure it? She said she can't help me once I'm in Mampang, so I feel like I can call on her help at this point and get rid of the trembling disease. I don't think that's cheating in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, I'm gonna say I can see off the trembling disease. Using up my 1 opportunity to call on Libra. She might be stuffed once I get into Mampang, but I see no reason why she can't help me now. The dawn has not quite broken when you rise to continue your journey. You have not yet formulated your plans for entering the fortress, but you are sure it will not be easy. You may add 2 stamina points for last night's rest, but if you ate nothing yesterday, you must deduct 3 stamina points. Well, I did eat yesterday. I ate pancakes. You pack your things and set off for the gate. Oh, my stamina now 12. The huge wooden gate towers above you as you approach. You are apprehensive about being spotted, but until the sun rises, this would be highly unlikely. The silhouetted outline of the fortress against the early morning sky is a haunting image, and you cannot help but feel puny and helpless in comparison with its size. You step up to a small door set into the gate. Will you knock on the door, knowing this will attract the guards, or you can cast a spell? There's a choice of spells: Mud, Dop, Zen, Yap, and Yaz. I can't remember what Yaz does. Can't remember what Zen does, but I know Dop opens doors, so that's what we're going to go for. I'm assuming this isn't immediately the one where I can open it by subtracting 92. It doesn't seem like a secret door, it just seems like a door. Yeah, it's just a door. Deduct 2 stamina points. Stamina now 10. Focusing your spell on the gate, you cast it and wait for the door to open. Nothing happens. Your spell is not powerful enough to open the entrance to the Mampang fortress. I mean, fair enough, but still a bit disappointing. You consider how you may be able to gain entrance to the fortress. There are a number of bushes scattered around which you could hide behind if the guards could be enticed out. There is also another possible plan. Above the small door is a thick metal band on the gate. You decide quickly you will rap on the door and perch on the metal band. When the guard comes out, you will drop down and nip through the door. It could work. You try out the perch. It will take some strength to support yourself while waiting for the guard, but you should be able to do it. You position yourself and then thump on the door with your foot. Seconds later, the door opens. A spiked helmet pokes out below you and a dark, hairy face grunts. The guard is surprised at finding no one about. He opens the door wider and steps outside. Should you drop on him and attack? No, this is probably not a good idea, as the guard looks like a powerful creature. The wind rustles one of the bushes and the guard goes over to investigate. He growls something loudly and looks around, but he hasn't seen you yet. Will you drop from your perch and nip inside the door, or wait and see what he does? No, I'm going to seize the moment. Oh, there's a picture of the guard, and you can see your own feet because you're sort of standing above it, almost like on the lintel. Yeah, it's pretty good, actually, much better than some of the other ones we've seen. I do enjoy seeing something from a really unusual perspective, and this kind of looking down is really good. Yeah, he's got like horrible armour, spiky helmet, a very, very spiky spear. Yeah, not one I'd want put inside me. It would be absolute hell coming out. But yeah, we're going to drop down and pop in. You drop to the ground as quietly as possible and turn to step inside the door. Ah! You jump with fright as you find yourself face to face with a guard in heavy armour. The guard is as surprised as you are, and he bellows loudly. From outside and within, 4 guards come to surround you, and you must now face all of them. Do you want to attack them? I do not. Would you rather try a spell? So, we've got Fog, Wok, Tell, Dumb, and Dim. I think the only one that stands a chance of helping here is Fog, which I believe literally summons a fog. Deduct 2 stamina points. As the guards approach, you cast your spell, but nothing happens. This spell can only be used within the confines of a windowless room, not outside, as you are now. The guards are approaching fast, and one strikes you with his sword. Deduct a further 2 stamina points. So stamina now 6. And I'm still not inside Mampang, so I still get the -1 skill, giving me a skill of 4. So, I don't know, this fight feels like it might be quite short. In the narrow confines of the doorway, the guards will attack you 2 at a time. The first pair moves in to fight. The first guard has a skill of 7 and a stamina of 7, and the second guard has a skill of 6 and a stamina of 7. So they've both got more skill than me and more stamina than me, so I'm definitely dead. You may choose which guard to attack in each attack round. Fight your chosen opponent as normal, but roll also for the attack strength of the other guard. If his attack strength is higher than yours, he will inflict a normal wound on you. If his attack strength is lower, he has missed, but you will not wound him, as you have chosen to attack his companion. As soon as one of the guards dies, a guard from the other pair will move up to take his place. And the third guard has a skill of 7 and a stamina of 8, and the fourth guard has a skill of 8 and a stamina of 7. And that's quite a clever little mechanic, in the sense that this fight gets more difficult the longer it goes on. And I like that. I think that's, that's a really sort of surprising and neat way to do an escalating fight. Yeah, really, really clever. I doubt I'll get to appreciate it, because I imagine I will die immediately. But for what may well be the last time this adventure, I'm going to roll some dice. The guards have brutally murdered me in the shortest possible amount of time. I did no damage to any of the guards. What a disaster. And I think that's the point at which I'm going to raise my hands and say, I surrender. I mean, kill me once, shame on you. Kill me 5 times, I think it is now. You know, maybe I should take the hint and abandon the quest at this point. Yeah, not my finest hour as a player of game books, it has to be said. A kind of fiasco. Calling it a debacle, I probably wouldn't argue with that. But them's the breaks, that's the way it goes somehow. I need to go away and find out if it's genuinely as brutal as I've made it seem, or if actually it's fine and everything is pretty well signposted, and actually I was just being immensely dense. And I'm going to go away and do it right now, but at the moment I don't feel especially good about this book, I have to say. It's not left me delighted by the idea of exploring further at this point, but I will, of course, do precisely that, and I'll be back for you in just a few moments with some closing remarks. Tatty bye. What a lot of times I died in that playthrough. Having got my usual computer back, I was extremely annoyed to discover that I had a clue from the Seven Serpents about the number of guards at the gate of Mampang Fortress that would have saved 1 of my lives. That's a bit irritating, but life gets in the way sometimes. That's just how it goes. I have now successfully finished The Crown of Kings, and actually it didn't take as long as I thought it was going to. Based on the clown fiesta that was my recorded attempt, I assumed this book was going to be brutally difficult. And it's definitely challenging. There's plenty of places where you can come a cropper, but finding the right solution to the various problems isn't as hard as it first appears. I was really concerned that with 800 paragraphs to go at, finding the various bits and bobs to get through Mampang would be like finding a needle in a haystack. But actually, Crown of Kings doesn't feel massive. If you stripped out the whole magic system, I think this would easily have come in at around 400 paragraphs. Magic and all the various bits associated with magic eat so many paragraphs. In previous books I've talked about this, but with this book I realised that there's more than just the spell eating sections. There's also all of the components and the acquiring of the components to deal with. With this being the last book in the series, Steve Jackson has crammed it full of spell components, and finding those components also eats sections and reduces the amount of book that's focused on the actual adventure. Now, with proper hindsight, I feel comfortable saying that the magic system is frankly bizarre. You've got the theoretically most useful spells that all cost too many stamina points to use consistently, and then more niche spells that you can use much more often, except there's a spell that lets you sense danger that only costs 2 stamina and you ought to be able to cast it pretty much all of the time, but for some reason you don't. There's a whole bunch of overlapping illusion spells, including one that generates the illusion of money, which I'm not sure the series even gives you the chance to use. It's barking mad, but in a way that's genuinely charming, and the process of remembering more and more of the spells with each attempt is super cool, as is gathering the gigantic shopping list of spell components so that you can cast everything. It's completely unbalanced, but at the same time, if you play a wizard, using spells to get past various obstacles feels cool every single time. And the fact that it runs off stamina works really well to give you the same sense of a resource diminishing as lots of fights, with the added twist that making you wonder whether fighting might have been a better choice with some of the encounters. It does eat an awful lot of sections though. And I don't consider that a problem here by any means. I think if the magic system wasn't there, an 800 paragraph book would feel unfathomably long. You'd probably end up throwing in a lot of required items, and that could make the scavenger hunt extremely challenging. There's 400 paragraph fighting fantasy books where finding all of the various bits and bobs feels like a chore, so I don't even want to imagine what that would feel like at twice the length. I'm sure there are some people out there who would love it, but in general, I think the longer books work best with a modern design that lets you explore freely, rather than the narrative-driven structure of your more traditional gamebook. Exploring is a lot easier when you don't have the pressure of having to remember every single decision you made previously and can go back and check places. And despite the depth of the magic system, this is still a solidly old-school gamebook underneath. It's got a defined beginning, middle and end, and that's unsurprising. It came out in 1987. Crown of Kings is actually fairly tightly focused. You have the approach to Mampang Fortress, and then once you get inside, the action's divided into 4 areas, each guarded by a magical Throban door. You need to get past the door that guards each area, and this design is actually a fairly generous one. You know that you'll have to find the key to each door in the area preceding it. Technically, all 4 keys could be in the first area, but realistically, if you haven't found the key that leads out of Area 2, you'll be looking in Area 2 to start with, not Area 1. The areas are quite tight, and I found the process of searching them to be very enjoyable. Essentially, the Crown of Kings is like Citadel of Chaos on steroids. It's got more or less the same structure and a broadly similar mission. Even some of the people you can meet in the castle feel quite familiar in broad outline, if not in detail. I remember Citadel of Chaos feeling incredibly rich, but also tiny, and this book feels somewhat the same. It's bigger than Balthus Dyer's gaff, but not by as much as you'd expect, and this is a great example of depth rather than breadth in design. Every encounter all the way to the final confrontation with the archmage feels really deep, and as for the archmage, we'll get to that. Like Citadel of Chaos, there's very few fights here which are actually required. One very diligent online critic, Thomas Rickon 35, suggests that there's only 5 unavoidable fights in the entire Sorcery series, which is insanely low. Part of that is the magic system for sure, but a lot of it is that most of the beings in Sorcery are pretty happy to chat before kicking off, and that's certainly the case here. This is such a strong feature, and it helps make the world of Sorcery really come alive for me. The boundaries between friend and foe are porous throughout the series. You can get attacked by the birdmen of Zaman, but there's also a faction within the fortress working to bring down the archmage. There's a grisly-looking ogre torturer who wants to play a deadly guessing game with you, but he's vulnerable to flattery. A group of red eyes from Kare, remember them, will try to mug you, but if you can bring them news of home, they might just relent. And there's so many examples of this throughout the book. Even the vilest monsters, arguably the blubbery, slime-encrusted mucolytics, want to whisper something to you instead of just punching you in the face. It's just a tragedy that they've got intensely poisonous breath, so no one will ever know what wisdom or whimsy they want to impart. The fortress of Mampang and its near environs are jam-packed with memorable encounters. There's an obligatory old man and a mystical projection of a different old man you met in a previous adventure, and there's a selection of brutish guards, but there's also a wide range of weird and wonderful inhabitants. There's an oddly well-spoken Neanderthal locked in a pillory, a greedy tax collector with a pet jaguar, another bunch of black elves with whom you can swap some poorly aged and somewhat racist banter, and everyone gets a degree of personality, which I absolutely love. Thanks to the magic spell that lets you talk to animals, you can discover that an angry skunk bear just wants you to get out of its cave, which is both useful and extremely relatable knowledge. So the character encounters are great. The traps, they're more of a mixed bag for me. There's some weird gotcha traps like the rope swing and the groaning bridge that feel mean and unfair without being quite weird enough to be fun. A groaning bridge is odd as hell, but an illusory bridge is pretty old school. It's not as old school as a statue that comes to life, and there's one of those here as well. That's another thing that can go along with pit traps on my list of things I could quite happily never see again in an adventure. Though I did like the one in Kare that's just a monster pretending to be a statue by standing really still, like one of those dreadful street performers. I mean, you can find that guy's house and everything, which is a great detail. This is just a statue of a ram that comes to life and tries to headbutt you to death. There's an item from a previous adventure that will help, but it's still off the peg as encounters go. Probably the best weird trap is the room full of razor blades that plunges you into darkness so that you have to either fumble your way across, stabbing yourself as you go, or make use of a candle to light your way. If you've found the candles, you get the choice of two, and one of them turns out to be a candle with a serious bloodlust, which will try and get you to die on the razors. And this is a cool encounter for the sheer oddness of it all, but also because it functions as one of the good kinds of maze if you haven't got the candle. It's all about spotting the patterns in the text and remembering which unexpected sharp objects you visited before. It makes me think that it would be lovely to see Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone collaborate one last time on a really big book, where Jackson could do the NPC encounters and the weirdos, and Livingstone could do the monsters and the traps and the general structure. I think that would be awesome. Another way in which the book is fairly kind is that there's a bunch of stuff that will definitely help, much of it from previous volumes, but there's not that much that is strictly required. Ironically, even though this book is incredibly focused on magic, it's something of a cakewalk for a warrior, especially one with a really good skill who's played the other books. You could end up with a skill well north of 12 if you did everything right in earlier instalments, plus access to more healing than the wizard. Healing you're unlikely to need because you can just pummel everyone you meet to death. Stamina is actually a much bigger issue for the wizard because there's not a ton of places to get more stamina in this book, and you need a chunk of it left for the finale. In some ways, the fact that Steve Jackson felt it necessary to leave it open for a warrior to win the whole series feels like an error. It feels like lacking the courage of your convictions to just go, you are playing a wizard, and we're going to design the whole game book around that unapologetically. I felt like it was just a decision largely informed by not wanting to panic younger players, which I can sort of understand as well. But it has a really, really useful knock-on effect because the wizard can use some of the warrior's solution as well, and that helps the book feel more welcoming than you might expect. There are a few different approaches, and that always feels better than there being only one true path. Really, things only break down at the end. Having made it through the last of the Throban doors, you run into a captive who has the unlikely name Farron Wide. Far and wide, get it? I realise I'm the last person who should be complaining about giving NPCs stupid names, but I do need to flag that Farron Wide is a very stupid name. He tells you how to get into a secret tower and you meet someone that you think is the archmage. You get taken prisoner and meet your old nemesis, Jan the Minimite, who will stop all but the most powerful spells. You find a way back into the fortress and it transpires that someone or something was pretending to be Farron Wide, who is actually dead. That someone or something turns into a demon who has a whopping skill of 7 and a stamina of 7. You kill it with magic or beat it into a fine pulp, and then summon friendly birdmen to take you back to Analand. There's a number of problems with this. The biggest is how much of an anticlimax it is. I'm not going to spoil how you escape from the prison, but it is absolutely awesome, a high point in the entire series. From there, however, it all winds up feeling very rushed, and instead of an epic showdown with a foe who has been lurking in the background this entire time, we just get a very underwhelming demon who goes down incredibly easily, despite the best efforts of John Blanche's art to sell it as a serious menace. Again, invoking comparisons with Citadel of Chaos, it is nowhere near as good as the confrontation with Balthus Dyer, and it's a bit of a damp squib of a climax, and I get the impression that Steve Jackson was pushed for time, or space, or both by the time he wrote it. The other issue is how confused it feels, and I think this is partly deliberate. I don't think it's supposed to be clear exactly what is going on and exactly what has happened at the end. There's an implication that the man who you think is the archmage may well be just one of his servants, and another implication that the archmage himself might not even exist. He may be a demonic entity wearing the shape of a man as and when it suits. There's bits of this I like. The idea that the ultimate villain may not actually exist is a fun one, and ambiguous endings can be every bit as satisfying as definitive conclusions, no matter what every YouTube video about the film Inception might claim. The problem is not with the ambiguity, but with the execution, which is rushed and doesn't give the different options the space they need. I've no problem with the core outline of the end of Crown of Kings. I think there were plenty of ways of delivering a satisfying conclusion that follows the broad plot beats and doesn't explain itself too fully. But what we get feels flat, and it would have felt flat at the end of a 400-paragraph standalone fighting fantasy novel. Never mind the supposed climax of an 800-paragraph behemoth, which is itself the climax of a 4-book sequence. That sense of disappointment aside, I think there's something interesting that threads throughout the series as a whole. And I think that's the thing it's reaching for here, which is the sense of a world that's simultaneously very strange and surreal, but also oddly pathetic. It's a world of giant magical whirlwinds and talking trees, but also of bored guards drinking themselves unconscious and she satyrs who are desperate for a story to relieve the tedium of their mountain existence. It's a world where a mind flayer can be a chef, and one where taxes still have to be paid. And it conjures up a feeling that's the same as a surprising amount of Monty Python sketches, a vision of post-war austerity alongside the surreal madness. It's a very distinctive British approach to fantasy gaming, which is sometimes called the pathetic aesthetic, and it's something that I really like when it shows up, and it shows up everywhere in Sorcery. There's no better example of this than the fact that the Sorcery books allow you to summon goblins, and basically every time you summon them, they are absolutely useless. And that's you, that's the adventurer, galumphing through the world wearing a green wig that lets you talk to a fish with a trail of dead goblins in your wake. So perhaps I shouldn't be overly critical of the ending. Perhaps this is just the only way it was ever going to end. Perhaps there's nothing more fundamentally British than a bad guy who has been built up to be the ultimate threat going down like a house of cards the second someone actually sticks one on him. It's like the much-hyped wrestling match between Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, two Goliaths of professional wrestling in the UK, the two unstoppable heavyweight monsters of the business at the time. And there was a lot of money in a meeting between the two, but as soon as you got them both in a ring, it became clear that neither of them could actually wrestle worth a damn. And what you end up watching is two extremely fat men north of 40 slapping their bellies and stalling for all they're worth before one of them gets pushed and falls out of the ring. That's Britain in a nutshell. That's the ending of Sorcery. And whenever I see a picture of Nigel Farage, I'm going to think, skill 7, stamina 7. Overall, I think I love Sorcery, but I had to talk myself into it like it's a meal at a very expensive restaurant. It's essentially one strand of fighting fantasy writ large. You've got this baroque and faintly lunatic magic system based on actual memorization that even the author can't entirely keep straight in his head. You've got all manner of wonderful and deadly encounters, but also the entire first book feels about as threatening as a turn round the park with a friendly aunt. Kare is amazing, perhaps because of all the books it best manages to walk the line between being a book that will kill you and a book that's about really odd people just trying to get on with their lives. Crown of Kings is maybe the most successful in terms of delivering an old school adventure, which really makes use of the systems that have been established. And I think I possibly enjoyed replaying Seven Serpents the most, because trying to find all of those naughty snakes was a blast. And that book's just got a really strong hook. Finding the snakes generates such a tremendous sense of urgency to the narrative. It's definitely a series I can see myself returning to at some point, just to enjoy playing them back to back to get a sense for how they feel as a whole connected narrative, and also checking how easy it is to get through with one character. In many ways, it's my favourite kind of good, which is something that's really good, but also riddled with flaws. And I don't feel comfortable with things that are flawless. There are a couple of entries in the Linderbaum competition this year that were technically so good that I felt a bit unwell. Sorcery is the kind of awesome I can get on with, like a really fun babysitter who drinks. It's been a great series, and finally playing the full thing ticks a few childhood boxes to boot. That is all for this episode. Join me in a couple of weeks for something more modern. I'm not entirely sure what, but I've got a few contenders. In the meantime, you can get in touch with me by emailing me at hjdoomretrofun, all one word, @gmail.com, or by following me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and I'll see you soon.